All right, folks, it is here. Yahoo leagues are officially open. We are rolling. We've got 1,000 things to cover over the next 2 months plus. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show. It's Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Besbris. Make sure to like, rate, subscribe as you settle in on today's pod, where we will be breaking down the Yahoo pre-rank board. And this will probably, heads up, be multiple shows over the next week. And then they adjust it, and then we make our tweaks. A couple little logistical administrative things here before we dive into everything. Please follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris. Follow Old Man Squad. That's my new network with some amazing hosts that have already joined up. That is at Old Man Squad over on social media. Also, that account will follow you back. So that's nice and convenient if you want to get a follow out of the ordeal. Also, I have and will be updating a Yahoo pre-rank and ADP tracker Google sheet. That link is going to be tweeted out. I'm going to try to make it a little more relevant. I'll try to get it into the show descriptions going forward. Basically, anytime that Yahoo adjusts their numbers, the pre-rank, this will be, every couple of weeks they shift bodies around. ADP is going to be a little bit more complicated, I think, but I'll figure out a good way to do it. And that way you guys can see where everybody's moving over the course of this 2-month and change draft season. That was my older son who couldn't apparently see me yelling into a microphone. Would you like to say hi?
Hi.
You get into the microphone. You got to do it into the mic or it doesn't count.
Hi.
There we go. Okay. See you later, Ashman. Yeah, I don't know what you're telling me, but I'm doing a show right now. I have no idea what that was. Anyway, so we'll get that updated. Make sure to check that out. Like, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let's dive in. This is the top of the Yahoo board. I know, not exactly a beautiful way to display it, but this is the Yahoo page so you guys can see what I'm working off of. Let's just talk through some names. Let's see what we got. You can officially do drafts now. Mocks are not open yet, by the way, but you can do regular leagues if you really wanted to. And some people are insane enough to do them early. Name one on the list. Victor Wembanyama is Yahoo's #1 player on the board. We've spent plenty of time on this podcast talking about Wemby and what to expect from him this year. It's going to be a monster season. I still prefer to take him #2. I know it's a little bit of, we talk about this a lot. I use this expression often. It's a little bit of hair splitting, but if I have the #1 pick, I'm still going Nikola Jokic. My reasoning being not, and I have to keep countering this post. There's a lot of straw man stuff that goes on with podcasts where people take one thing you say and then create this weird argument out of it. I'm not saying that I don't think Wemby's going to be awesome. I think he's probably going to be #2, but a lot of his value, as we saw in the second half of last season, a lot of his value is tied up in shot blocking. He is, as we've talked about before, the one player in the first round where if you remove his best category, he falls out of the first round. These guys at the top of the board, you take out Jokic's rebounds, he stays at the top of the first round, or assists, he stays at the top of the first round. Luka, AD, all these guys. For Wemby, he's the one where when you remove blocks, he falls 2.5 rounds. It's not to say that he's a one-trick pony. He's good at other stuff. His points were fine. They'll probably get better. His threes will keep getting better. Rebounds, assists probably stay somewhat consistent with the last 2 months of last year. Field goal, free throw percent, I don't know what they do. Maybe incremental increases. So all these things are good. But at the end of the day, when you have a guy whose value is so heavily tied up in being the only player in his own stratosphere in one category, that makes that guy a little bit less of a sure thing to be the #1 guy. So give me Jokic. I think it's easier to build the team on Luka or on Nikola Jokic. Looking at the next name on the board. And then give me Wemby. And then, frankly, if you're in head-to-head, you could actually make an argument for Luka over Wemby because of that same kind of as the Nikola Jokic thing, where there's just more categories that he's very, very, very good at. Luka gives you hyper elite points, threes, boards, and assists, and very good steals. He gets you a lot of the way to 5 categories, where with Wemby, he kind of gets you a lot of the way to 2. I mean, basically all the way to 1 of them. And then, decent to good in a few other things. I probably still take Wemby over Luka just because of the excitement factor. But I totally get it. And then from a Roto standpoint, again, for me, Roto, or head-to-head, frankly, Jokic is my number 1. Roto, I probably go Wemby at 2. You go Luka, I guess, at 3 there. And then head-to-head, you could potentially flip-flop them, and that's fine. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is at number 4 on this board. And so Shai is one where I think maybe I disagree with the consensus a little bit. And I want to go into that for just a moment because, again, I'm in no huge rush. It's August 9th. We got all damn August, September, and half of October to talk about this stuff. I see you guys, by the way, in the chat room. I love it. I love that there's chatter going already. Let's get this bad boy going. Shai, during the second half of last season, or we can just talk about the last 2 months, really. He was more like number 6 to number 8 range. The players in front of him, Jokic, AD, Luka, Joel Embiid, who obviously missed a lot of time in there, and Wemby. So he's still in elite company, but there was a little bit of a drop-off for Shai. The 1.6 steals being, I would probably argue, the biggest factor in that. He actually only averaged 27.5 points over the final 2 months of last year, too. So over the full season, it was at 30, but his shots per game trended down. His free throw attempts per game trended down. Was it a case of him just running out of gas? Was it a case of other Thunder starting to comfortably do more so that Shai didn't have to do as much? However you slice it, the odds that he goes for 30 points on 54-87 splits again with 2 steals per game is relatively low in my eyes. So, you're looking at a guy who, and so, I don't have a huge problem with him going at 4 because I don't know that there's a more obvious decision there, especially when you look at the dudes right behind him on the board. But just don't be surprised if Shai finishes per game at like number 6 this year or something like that. I don't think he's a lock to be a top 3 again. Giannis is number 5. Giannis requires no discussion at all. We talked about him on yesterday's Bucks analysis show. Giannis is never going to be in the top 12 on a 9-cat basis because he's a punt free throw guy. You punt free throws, Giannis jumps to the top of the board. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. I generally am not a punt free throw dude, so I generally don't have any Giannis. But if you were punting free throws last year, he was number 4. So I get it. But you also lock yourself into a build with the 5th pick if you take him there. That's the give and take. I'm probably not doing it. Tyrese Haliburton is number 6. This one concerns me. We blamed a lot of his downtick during the second half of last year on his nagging hamstring injury, but I also think that there was a Pascal Siakam situation going on that we can't fully discount. So even a healthy Tyrese Haliburton is still going to have Siakam floating around nearby. During the second half of last year, Haliburton played 31 minutes per game. He averaged 17 and 9.5. His field goal percent dropped considerably, and I think that's a thing that probably comes back up. But he was ranked number 25 during that stretch. When you think about over the entire season, Haliburton was number 10 at 20 points, 11 assists. He was 48-86 were the splits there. And I am a little bit worried. 15 shots a game doesn't seem like it's that insane. 11 assists per game is really outstanding. But if there is any of that slight downtick, even if we just look at the last 2 months when he was sort of more of the way through recovering from his hamstring injury, what Haliburton do we get? And I find it a little bit hard to accept that he's going to go top 6 because at his finest moment, he was more like top 5, which I think is probably the absolute pinnacle ceiling, doesn't have any help kind of rank for Haliburton this year. In reality, he ended up, and over the last month when he basically we can assume he was pretty much over the hamstring thing. He was number 11 because his steals and blocks were unsustainably high. It was at 2.6 combined in that category with 18 points and 9 assists. If you take 18 and 9 with 46-85 splits or something in that range and dial the steals and blocks down to maybe a more, he was at 1.9 for the year, which is pretty good, instead of 2.6. That probably puts Haliburton around the turn, early second round. So he's not a guy I'm taking at 6. I think this is a little early for him. And I know people are like, oh, but just assists dry up so fast. This is true. I just think some of the guys behind, yes, obviously I'd rather have Haliburton than Trae Young, but Trae, you can get a few picks deeper if you really badly want assists and scoring, and maybe you don't care as much about field goal percent, perhaps. I think there are ways around having to take Haliburton at 6. Freddie VanVleet had 8 assists a game last year, and he's going in the 30s again, despite finishing at number 18 per game. I think there's opportunities to get those assists slightly cheaper. Let's keep going here. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do that. I keep forgetting to do this, but I'll do it now. Guys, we're just going to step away for about 6 seconds and get you guys our first commercial break of the show. We'll be right back. And welcome back from the commercial break. Thanks to everybody that's watching live and everybody listening after the fact. Please take that moment to like, rate, and subscribe. This is the beginning of so many draft season episodes. I'm so excited about this stuff, and I hope that that's coming through in my voice. You can find me again on social media at Dan Bespris or at Old Man Squad. Please do all of those things to help us continue to grow. Anthony Davis, pre-rank of number 7. This is about as early as his pre-rank's been since early in his Lakers tenure. And I get it. He played in 76 out of 82 games last year. He's number 4 per game. By totals, he was number 3. He was really in that top 3 totals department with Jokic and Shea. But damn, that's a lot. That's a lot of draft capital to spend on Anthony Davis when we know how finicky his body can be, especially off a year where he played a full complement of games. Can he do that 2 times in a row? That's asking a lot. Although at the same time, the guys behind him here, they all have, you're starting to get to, and frankly, I would argue after the top 3, you're getting into maybe top 4. You're getting into guys that all have something wrong. It's small because these are first rounders, but there's something wrong that you have to overlook to take that pick. With Giannis, it's free throws. With Haliburton, it's the downtick late last year. With Anthony Davis, it's the body. So yeah, I think I could get on board with taking AD at 7. I just wish that there weren't so many guys that also have something wrong with them that could push AD down the board another 3 or 4 slots. But I also get it. So this one's totally fine. Jason Tatum at 8 is a bit early. Tatum finished at number 15 per game last year, although admittedly he had a much better second half than first half of the season. I guess it was more like the last month when he kind of came on a bit more. But to Tatum's credit, he started to shoot the ball a little bit better. His numbers were fine, but the Celtics, they won the title, so there's going to be that letdown factor. I don't think I like this one. I just don't think that the per game appeal is high enough. Tatum's appeal has always been that he's going to play 90% of his team's games. He's done that, I think, basically every year other than maybe the COVID season. So by totals, yeah, he was number 11 this last year. That's pretty damn close to number 8. But I really don't want to take a guy at the 8th pick that I think is going to be an early to mid second rounder and then rely on them to just play in a ton of games to get to that spot. I want to take a guy here at 8 that I think could actually be number 8. Which is why I have no real problem with Anthony Davis. So Tatum's probably not a guy I'm targeting this early. And we're getting into a pocket of names now where if, say, I get the 8th pick, I might be going down the board a little bit here. Because look at this list. After Tatum is Joel Embiid at 9, who is going to be, in my opinion, the most difficult player to make a decision on in fantasy drafts this year, because he played in 39 games last season, but was running away with the number one overall per game slot before he got hurt. Just blitzing the league. It was he and Shea, and then Shea slowed down as the season went on, and Embiid didn't slow down. He full on slammed into a stop sign. But Embiid was at 35 points, 11 boards, 5.5 assists, 1.5 threes, 2.9 defensive stats, and 53-88 splits on ridiculous volume. He was a net positive in 7 out of 9 categories. The only one where he was a significant negative was turnovers, and the other one was a very small negative in threes. Joel Embiid was hyper elite in points, boards, blocks even, and free throw percent. He was elite in field goal percent. He was good in assists and steals. He was an unbelievable foundational piece if he could have made it to like 64 basketball games, which I get it is asking a lot. He's done it like one freaking time. But if you can get Embiid, and people don't even want him at 9 based on early replies on Twitter, at least, this is a guy that may fall to the very end of the first round. I don't know how you pass up a guy like that in a games cap format at pick 9, 10, 11, 12, something. Like, how often is a clear-cut top 2 fantasy player sitting there for you at number 11? That's a legitimate possibility this year. Head-to-head, I get it. Like, you can't take a chance on Embiid in head-to-head. It's gonna break your team. If he plays 39 games, you're just done. In Roto, with a games cap, you're not actually done. Because as awful as Embiid's health was this year, and 39 games is awful, by totals, he was still number 47. I mean, he was legitimately like a 50-game season away from being a top 20 player. That's all it would have taken when you're that good per game. And we know this because we've seen it. We know this because we've seen other guys that have terrible games played numbers still post solid total. Like Donovan Mitchell played 55 games. He was number 8, by the way. Forget number 1 or 2. And Donovan Mitchell in totals ranks was 31. Take that and crank it up to the number 1 player in fantasy. Easy top 20. Probably better. How many games would Embiid need to play if you drafted him at like 11 to get to number 11 if he's a top 2 per game guy? The answer probably sits somewhere in the high 50s. Do we think he can get to high 50s? I mean, I kind of do. So if he falls to me in Roto leagues at 9, 10, I'm probably doing it. Head-to-head, I get it. You just skip over it. You let somebody else take the big swing, mostly because you just like, in head-to-head, you just want to be competitive. You don't want to have your season end on the 4th week of the year. Anthony Edwards is number 10 in pre-ranks. You can't possibly get me on board with this one. Anthony Edwards played 79 games last year, which basically meant he played the entire season, and he was number 20 by totals. Even maximum health couldn't get him into the first round. And I get it. Anthony Edwards is fun. He averaged 26, 5, and 5. Lots of cool stuff. But he's like another something in his regimen here. He's something cruising into hyper elite category away from being considered as a first rounder. Right now, he's a very good 3rd rounder in my eyes, because he does a bunch of things relatively well. He's not a good field goal percent guy. His turnovers are kind of high. So obviously that an 8 cat is going to bump him up the board a little. But like, what are you getting out of Anthony Edwards that really builds your team? Like, as a first rounder, what does he provide that's first round level? The answer is nothing. 26 points per game is about as close as he gets to having a truly elite category. He is merely pretty good from a fantasy standpoint in threes, assists, steals, and he made himself decent in free throw percent last year. When you're drafting a first rounder, you should be thinking about foundational piece of your team. You want hyper elite categories that you can build off of. Not someone who's pretty good in a bunch of stuff. That's what you get in the second, in the third, to sort of make sure your team doesn't fall back in categories. And frankly, in the second round, oftentimes you're looking for elite stuff, just less of them. First round, you want like 4 or 5 categories out of your guy. Second round, you're looking for like 3. Third round, you're like, look, if I don't get a super elite, that's fine. I just want to not tank anything here. And then you're just hunting the rest of the way. So no thank you to Anthony Edwards at 10. Trae Young at 11 is intriguing because I think people are like, oh, maybe it's going to be the Trae Young from before DeJounte Murray showed up, which was, by the way, number 11 in 9 category leagues and better than that in 8 cat. Based on everything we've seen from Trae Young, the 46% field goal he put up that year was more the anomaly. Every other season, it's been like 42, 43, something in that neck of the woods. So I don't think we can just assume the 46 comes back. We can probably assume that 20 shots and 10 plus assists per game comes back. And so to that end, Trae Young is going to be a very fun point guard to roster. But you're probably looking more at, I mean, if you really want to figure out what was the last Trae Young season when he was alone, he was number 54 that year. I think it'll be better than that. But he's very much a head-to-head type of guy to roster. You know, we're not talking about, well, let's see here. When was the last time he was alone? Yeah, I mean, we can even look at this past season with DeJounte Murray. He was number 35, 11 assists per game, so he did more distributing. He didn't shoot quite as much. Maybe the assists come down a little bit. They'll have Jalen Johnson doing more, but that's not really an argument for Trae doing anything less. He'll be a punt turnover guy if you draft him in the first round, but he probably will give you elite scoring and elite assists and elite free throw percent. So to that end, I get it. There is sort of like a 3 to 3.5 categorical foundation from Trae Young that makes more sense as a first rounder than someone who, say, and this is for more head to head, I'd say, than like an Anthony Edwards, who we just talked about, who's really only near elite in one thing. But at the same time, you are throwing some stuff away by going Trae Young in the first. You're throwing turnovers away, most likely. You're throwing field goal percent away. I mean, you can make up for it later, but you probably detonate some of the categories you were already good at because, like, you pair Trae Young with a traditional center who gets no assists and not great at free throw percent and no threes and stuff like that. So you like, and low scoring, it becomes more of a roto-y, be good at a lot of stuff build. If you're thinking head to head, you're going to have to shore up a few other categories as well. I have a similar issue with Domantas Sabonis as I do with Anthony Edwards. Sabonis is the number 12 pre-rank player. I just like, so I get it. He's been extraordinarily durable. And by totals last year, where did Sabonis finish by totals last season? He was number 12, but that's because he played in all 82 games, which is not, sometimes I'll refer to it as a bit of an artificial bounce. Playing in 82 games from a guy who's good is very useful. But he was number 29 per game, meaning that his only shot to get to number 12 in totals rank was to literally not miss one game. That's a tall order. So no, same issue I have with Anthony Edwards. Give me someone that I think could actually be the number 12 per game guy here. And that's a guy I would look at. I would rather I'll happily take Domantas Sabonis in the middle of the second round. Happily. Because at that point, you're like, okay, well, at least I have the high floor. He's not going to ruin my season by being, number 80 or something like that. But you got to have that first round appeal. Domantas Sabonis, hyper elite in rebounds, excellent in assists, and solid in field goal percent. So you do get kind of like a 3-category start, which isn't, again, all that dissimilar from Trae Young. But you also get a big hole in your free throw percent. He's high turnovers, like Trae Young, doesn't do much defensively, doesn't shoot the 3 ball, and doesn't score as much as these other guys. It's a hard player to build off of. We finished up the first round, and let's get to a couple of questions on the board here. Matt, Aussie Knicks fan, says, I won't be able to catch this live, but love the content. Keen on your thoughts on where Harden lands. I feel like 25th could be sleeper potential. Also, with Porzingis out half the season, is he another sleeper? The answer to James Harden is hell yeah. I think he probably moves up the board during the next redo because, yes, he is at number 25. I don't know if we'll get to him on this episode, but we'll certainly get to him soon. Porzingis, no. Porzingis, no. I don't want anyone who's going to be hurt for multiple weeks, let alone multiple months at the beginning of the season. So, no to that one. Asada Taco, I know I've talked S about Tobias Harris, but 81 is going to be a steal. Yeah, that's crazy. I almost don't want to talk about him because I want him to stay at 81 so bad. Same with Chris Paul at 93. Horford, Middleton around 150. LOL. Yeah. So Middleton's going to be a huge pain in the neck because we know they're gonna kid glove him. Al Horford is going to sit out back-to-backs, but with Porzingis out for half the year, Horford is going to be a target for me everywhere. I was kind of hoping that Chris Paul would fall outside the top 100 because he's so old. But if he gets 25 to 30 minutes in San Antonio, that'll be a perfectly fine spot. I just thought there'd be a little bit more value there with him. Also from Asada Taco, Ant and Banchero being placed at their absolute ceilings. Banchero might get there in points leagues, but don't see it for 8 cat, let alone 9. Correct. I agree with all of that. Banchero we'll get to in a couple of shows. He's a little bit farther down the board. Important question. What first rounder isn't punt turnover? This is from my buddy Dem Birds. Well, it depends on if you're looking at the guys getting drafted in the first round or the guys that are going to be per gamers in the first round. But there's actually quite a few. Shea was not punt turnovers last year. He was at only 2.2 as a guard. I don't think Nikola Jokic was with 3 turnovers. I mean, when I say punt turnovers, I'm looking at guys that are high 3s into the 4s. Haliburton was only 2.3. Kawhi, who, I mean, look, say what you want about his games played. He's going to be a first rounder per game. He was at only 1.8. So there were a handful last year of the guys on this board that are going first round. Jokic at 3, I don't think forces you to punt turnovers. Shea at 4, Hallie at 6, Anthony Davis at 7. Yes, he's a big man. I don't think Tatum was punt turnovers. Yeah, he was at only 2.5 last year. Embiid probably would be. Edwards a little bit. I mean, he's not a punt turnover guy, but taking him here, you might want to because you're going to have to get your assists somewhere else. So he sort of forces you into that build. Trae Young, yes. Sabonis, I guess he's iffy there. I'd probably say slightly towards yes, but he does give you a lot of assists. So at least there's that. So you got a few choices in that account. See what else we got in the chat room here. Just a good discussion. So let's turn back into our stuff here. Hey, this is the largest. I know it's simple, but this is the largest live viewing we've had on this channel since we fired it up. So hi everybody. Excited. I guess you guys are excited also. Please, by the way, if all of you that are watching live or after the fact, I guess, but sort of aiming at the folks that are here because the chat room is humming. Feel free to post, but also remember, please like, rate, and subscribe. I will throw my face a little bit larger on the screen. There you can see the Twitter handle, at Dan Bespris. More importantly right now, because I think most of you guys probably already follow me, at Old Man Squad is the follow for the whole network. So please follow that as well. It will follow you back. I'll maintain again that subscribing is probably the most important thing to do here. Let's see how much farther we can get. We're almost a half an hour in. I don't want these shows to be like an hour long. That's just too much. And I still kind of want to do a team show at some point today. We still have, I think, 7 more teams to get through. So, whatever. Yeah, let's go a little bit farther here. One more note. Denbird says, I disagree that someone averaging 4 means you can't win the category. Yeah, I mean, you just have to be very careful elsewhere. But I also want to make sure people realize that to say to punt something doesn't mean that you're never going to win it. It just means that you're not really targeting it anymore. So if you start with Trae Young, you're probably not going to try to win turnovers because then you sort of kneecap yourself in the categories that he's good at. The guys that are low on turnovers, typically the guys that are lower in assists and scoring and things like that. So if you lean into the Trae Young build, for example, you probably would just want to keep leaning into it. And that's why you end up losing that category more often than you win it. So it's more of a like broad strategic thing. Next name on the list is Kyrie Irving at 13. That's too early. And I'm blown away by this one. I know Kyrie was number 9 per game last year, but he only played in 58 ball games. And this is sort of like the again thing with Kyrie. Yeah, again, he played in only 58 ball games. He's not going to make it through a season healthy. It's just not going to happen. And I know I love the 9 per game, but going at 13 doesn't create enough wiggle room for bad health. Last season, as you guys might recall, when Yahoo Leagues opened around this time a year ago, Kyrie was going like around 16. And then I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take a whole bunch of Kyries because at least that left a little bit of a buffer if things went poorly for him. There's no buffer anymore. I mean, 2-3 slots of bad health, he'll blow past that in the negative direction. So this is too early for Kyrie. I would not be surprised, by the way, to see him fall in future rebuilds of this Yahoo pre-rank board. And I think his ADP will be lower than his pre-rank because I think he's a guy that people are going to avoid a little bit. Steph with a pre-rank outside the first round for the first time in, good God, I have no idea how long. And it's fine. I mean, it makes sense. He was number 22 in 9-cat last year. He had a very poor steals year and a down field goal percent season. I think we can assume that something there will probably rebound a little bit, whether it's the steals getting back to like 0.9 or 1.0, or the field goal percent maybe getting back to like 47 or 48. Either way, I think Steph early second round is a pretty safe play because a worst case scenario for Steph, especially with Clay gone now, and they're going to sort of mix and match the other guys. A worst case scenario for Steph this year is probably, again, late second round per game. And that's not going to break your team. And a lot of what you should be looking for in the second round is a guy going to break your team? I don't think Steph will. At number 15, this is probably my first pick that I really like in terms of value. Kevin Durant at 15. He's being demoted here because of fear of injury, but he's coming off a pretty damn healthy season. Almost all of KD's injuries over the last 5 years have been the like Jimmy Butler fell into the side of his knee kind of thing. And he himself was like, look, I got to do a better job of just like getting my long legs out of the way of this stuff. And he did that this season. And I don't know if it was luck or something that he changed with the way he stands on a basketball court, but he made it through the year largely unscathed. He was number 11 only because he had his worst free throw shooting year in I don't even know how long. You fix that with KD. He goes back from 85, 86, closer to 90, and he jumps from 11 probably up to number 9 or 8. Probably 9. So this is a guy, I mean, we're talking Kevin Durant here, that you're now able to get in the second round, who admittedly fits more of the very good at a lot of stuff mold and not the sort of like, how do we build off of this foundation kind of dude. But he is a big-time positive contributor in points, blocks, field goal percent, and free throw percent. He's a small contributor in threes, rebounds, and assists, and he's really not bad at anything. He also had a weirdly high turnover year at 3.3. I think that number probably comes down this coming season. So give me all the Kevin Durant at pick 15. One of my favorites on the board so far. One of the ones with a very high floor. And again, your only fear there is, does he get whacked in the side of the knee? I'm willing to draft him there and hope that he does not. Donovan Mitchell at number 16 falls into that same category of, can these guys live long enough to tell the tale? Donovan was number 8 per game last year. There's every reason to believe he'll be a first rounder per game again this coming season, but he played in only 55 ball games. Still, mid-second round, I think, is a perfectly reasonable spot to take him. You just hope that Donovan can get to like 63, 64 games. That would get it done at this spot. And I'm likely willing to take that shot because, again, you get that high per game. And so then you're just like, okay, please make it through the week. Every week, you're just staring at him. And if he does it, gets you to that 63, 64, 65 range, everything over that is just gravy. So I like Donovan Mitchell at 16. I think that's totally fine. Chet Holmgren, pre-rank of 17. That is very interesting. He was number 19 last year, and they brought in Isaiah Hartenstein. Not to say that Chet isn't going to get better, and he might. I just don't know that there's going to be as much, at least on a per-minute basis. So maybe we see the minutes go up from 29 to 31. That's the way that we could see some of his numbers take a small step forward. But I also think you're going to see rebounds harder to come by with Hartenstein around. I think you might actually see blocks, believe it or not, harder to come by with Hartenstein around, because when those two guys are on the floor, Holmgren is going to have to guard some fours. Maybe not every possession, depending on the opponent, but I don't think they want Hartenstein running around the perimeter when they've got Holmgren and his 85-foot arms able to do it. We've seen it before. We've seen it again. Big men that slide down and have to play a few minutes at power forward, it's not good for their fantasy numbers. Now, the nice thing about Holmgren is that he does have a very safe floor because he's just not bad at anything. But he's not a guy I'm targeting in the middle of the second round. I think last year was the cash-in season on Chet, and we did that by having him on the old man squad, believe it or not. But this year, to put him higher, and I get it. Like, he played in all 82 ball games, so by totals, he was a first rounder. But again, we need to remember a lot of his value is tied up in one category. If that category tapers off, or if he doesn't take a step forward, then you're again relying on max health to get him past his ADP. Or pre-rank, rather, not ADP. Apologies. Use the right word. Devin Booker at 18. Very safe play. He finished at 16 last year. He'll probably be a little bit worse this season, assuming Bradley Beal is there for more than 50-some-odd games. But it'll be a small downtick. He's a high-floor, safe play who gets you a lot of interesting categories without blowing up your turnovers. So Booker, you know me, I like to win percentages, and he's good at both of them. You'll just have to find your assists. Not assists. You'll have to find your defensive stats somewhere else, and we can do that a little bit later in the draft. So I like Booker at 18. I think that's a totally fine spot for him. Tyrese Maxey at number 19 is too early for me. Maxey finished at 21 last year in what I would classify as a best-case scenario, which was half a season as the only player on the team because Joel Embiid was down. Now he's playing with Embiid again and with Paul George. He's going to do less. I see Maxey as a late 20s, early 30s guy this coming season, so there's no way I'm drafting him this early at number 19. Take him off my second rounders board. Jalen Brunson was number 30 last year. He finished with a flourish, but that's because the whole Knicks roster was out. I love Jalen Brunson. I love his fantasy game. I love his reality game. He's awesome. He's super fun to watch. But he's not a top 20 guy when that team is healthy. Sorry. This is too early for me on Brunson. He's also a guy where you can look at it and you can be like, I'm not really getting, like, the scoring was the hyper elite category for him. And so that type of player is always going to go early. But I'd rather have these other guys around him that have a much higher ceiling than Brunson, namely the dude right behind him. And that's Damian Lillard, who's at 21 and probably my second favorite early pick here. Not to surprise anyone that Kevin Durant and Damian Lillard are on my board. Dame finished at 24 last season in what I thought was about as bad as it could have gone with Milwaukee. He never really settled in. The field goal percent was bad all season long. Yeah, he got his decent threes and assists and good free throw percent, but there's more in the tank with this dude. If his field goal percent bumps up even 1 percentage point, he jumps past this mark because you're already getting into a spot where there's some players clumped together. Dame, LaMelo Ball on last year's board before he got hurt, Steph, Maxey, those guys were basically all tied. Even the tiniest little step forward for Dame, and he's back inside the top 20 on a per-game basis. And I think that's very doable. And we're talking about Damian Lillard here. Worst case scenario is like 35th. So great floor, some ceiling, chance to improve over last year. I know he's old, but he's healthy. He played in 73 out of 82 games. I like Dame a lot at this spot. An early old man squad type of candidate. Guys, we're going to make it through 2 full rounds on today's show. We're closing in on it. LeBron at 22 is perfectly reasonable. He finished at 17 last year. I mean, you just assume that there's some slight body down. I mean, watch the Olympics. It doesn't look like it, but he's just not running all that much. So there's going to be a lot of energy conservation LeBron over the course of a year, especially if the Lakers get off to an okay start instead of pooping their pants at the beginning of another year. Then you'll see him skip a few more games, try to get the minutes down under 35 to more like 33 and a half, 34. So there'll be just these little things that taper off. He's also coming off one of his best three-point shooting seasons ever, which can we assume that happens again? It could, but I don't think we can assume it. So say the field goal percent goes down a little bit, say the rebounds, the steals, all that stuff comes down just a little bit, then he falls to basically right where he's getting drafted. So to me, LeBron is a perfectly reasonable take here. Scotty Barnes at 23, I actually like this pick. It's not my favorite one on the board because the Raptors are in danger of being a bad team late in the year, although I think they have enough to compete for the play-in a bad lower half of the Eastern Conference. But Barnes was already at number 20 last year, and that's with some erosion as the season went on. I don't know if he gets better. That's kind of the big fear there. Like, is there more he could do? Maybe the free throw percent gets above 80, and that's how he wiggles forward 3 or 4 slots. But he feels like a very safe second-round pick. Don't you guys think? At least that's how it feels to me. Very safe second-round pick in Scotty Barnes. So I like that one there. Sometimes safe in the second round is the way to go. And finally, DeJounte Murray at number 24. I don't want it. DeJounte finished last year at 39. He's going to a place where he will likely do less on a night-to-night basis. Last year, he took 19 shots a game. That's actually the highest of his career. Admittedly, the assists were lower than during his San Antonio days, so the usage overall was a little bit lower there. But now he's going to a place with 3 other ball handlers. At least in Atlanta, it was like anytime Trae Young wasn't on the court, it was DeJounte's basketball. There's always going to be somebody, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, that he's battling with. I don't think there's going to be a moment where he's not on the floor with one of those other guys. I mean, maybe little bits here and there, and if guys get hurt, that changes the calculus a little bit. But unless DeJounte Murray's steals go back up to 2, I just don't see any pathway to him getting to this mark on a per-game basis. Maybe by totals, because he played in 78 games last year, and maybe the health is good again. But we got to remember, DeJounte Murray is not a good percentages guy. He's got to get it done with max counting stats, including the defensive side. And how is all of that available right now? It isn't. So no, I say nay to DeJounte Murray. And we'll go one pick deeper because I actually really, really, really like James Harden at 25. I don't understand this placement at all. He was 26th 9-cap per game last year with Paul George on the Clippers. Remove a dude taking 17 shots a game, Harden's going to get a lot of that ball handling. So assists are on the way up. Scoring's on the way up. Free throw impact is on the way up. Threes are on the way up. There is a lot to point out with Harden and say, these categories, like field goal percent as a negative, is probably going to increase. Okay, fine. Although maybe he gets better shots. Maybe it's not as many threes and maybe he goes to the rim a little bit more. I think you're going to see a lot of pick and roll with Zubats on this team. You might even see some pick and roll with Kawhi Leonard. The big guys on the Clippers are going to have to do way more with a big 2 instead of a big 3. That's a large amount to get shuttled back to the main. And yes, I get it. Norman Powell's going to do some, and various other randos are going to do stuff. But let's be honest. Most of what Paul George leaves behind is going to Harden and then Kawhi, because Kawhi was already, the 1A. Paul George was the 1B, and Harden was number 2. And now he jumps up to be the 1B. Or 3. I guess if you have a 1A and a 1B, then you need to jump down to 3. Going from 3 to 2 is a big leap. I expect Harden to be 20 or better. I think Harden has a chance to be 16 or better. Giving me Harden at 25 is chef's kiss. And the only problem I see is that when Yahoo redoes their board, he probably jumps up 5 slots. I think Maxey probably goes down. I think Brunson probably goes down. And this is a guess at what Yahoo's board might look like after they rebuild it. Kyrie probably falls a little bit, maybe not far enough to matter in a James Harden discussion. But someone, like Chet, Maxey, Brunson, DeJounte, these guys could all slide down, and you could see Harden bump up to like 21 in the next iteration of this board. And I'd still take him there. I'd take Harden earlier than that, frankly. I think his floor is incredibly high, and there's some ceiling there. So, as we wrap up today's first look at the Yahoo Big Board, we only got through 25. We'll do more probably next week. You guys can marinate on this one for a little bit. Am I going to do a team show today? I don't know. I might do some shorts instead. I put one out yesterday. I might do a few more in that one. First of all, before I give you some what's to come here, I also want to do a recap of the names that I like and the names that I didn't from this first 25. But one last reminder at the end of the show, please like, rate, subscribe, and follow on social. This stuff is so critically important right now. Now it's truly more than ever, because this is when people are going to start bringing their eyeballs back. And so if we can create kind of that positive feedback loop, that's massive. Here's your names. Names that Dan liked in the top 25, where they are. Steph Curry at 14, KD at 15, Booker at 18, Dame at 21, Harden at 25. Names that Dan thought were perfectly reasonable where they were taken: Wemby, Jokic, Doncic, Shea, Giannis, Haliburton, AD, Tatum. I guess I don't really like Tatum all that much at 8. Let me rethink that. We'll put Tatum in the don't like it as much category. Trey, maybe Sabonis. I don't really like Kyrie at 13. I got to make sure I get this ironed out right. Okay, so let's try this again. Guys that I think are going in about the right spot: Wemby, Jokic, Luka, Shea, Giannis, Haliburton, AD, Trey, maybe Sabonis, Donovan Mitchell, LeBron, and Scotty Barnes. And the ones I don't like where they're going are... it's hard for me to say Brunson. I just feel like this is too high for him. Tatum, Anthony Edwards, Kyrie, Maxey, Brunson, and DeJounte Murray. Those are the ones I think are pretty obviously too high. And then Chet Holmgren and Domantas Sabonis, if you're going to go back to him, are guys that I'm like, well, I guess we could maybe do it okay. I guess it's okay. Not super thrilled about it, but doesn't eat me up inside like some of the other ones that I've marked down and read on my own paper here. Okay. That was awesome. Leagues are open. No mocks yet. According to our good buddy Dan Titus, who is working behind the scenes over there at Yahoo Sports, mocks should be within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Once those engines are up and running, we'll do pretty much a mock almost every day on this channel. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I'm having trouble figuring out how to end this show because I'm so excited about this stuff. So I'll just say thanks so much again, everybody. I'm Dan Vespris for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'll be seeing an awful lot of you guys over the next few months, years. See you tomorrow. Wait, it's Friday. I'll see you soon.